Well, that's all I got. What do you got, Meta?
Well, I have, as I reach over real fast, I have a book called Mistborn, which,
By Brandon Sanderson.
yes, Brandon Sanderson. It kind of rhymes. Not really. Sort of. Possibly. Yeah, Mistborn. It is a series last Christmas, which is actually kind of funny because I just completed for Christmas. I made a deal with somebody, and we would trade off book series and read at least one book in that series to see if, we liked the series. Because we both knew about our series that we liked, but the other person had never really read them or even heard of them. So we traded off, and my job was to read Mistborn. So I did like any good person does when they're in a deal with somebody, is I'd wait on it for about a year's worth of time and then complete it really quickly in 1 month.
What did you give over, if I may ask?
I gave over Discworld.
Oh, okay, yes.
So
solid choice.
It's a fantastic choice, I felt. So that was what I handed over. But in turn, I got Mistborn. For those of you who don't know, Mistborn is a series in a world where, without trying to tell you too much about it, but I'm gonna stop myself right here real fast. I'm gonna talk a little bit about it, but then I need to go into spoilers to really get into the details of it. So I will let people know when we're about to go into spoilers really quickly. But anyway, it's in a world where essentially there is a man by the name of the Lord Ruler, and he effectively owns the world. He has reigned over it for 1,000 years, and the population is essentially divided into the Ska, or the slaves, and the nobility. And it follows a few characters as they attempt to essentially overthrow said Lord Ruler in his 1,000-year reign. Utilizing, for a few of them, a power called allomancy, which is the control over certain metals. By ingesting them and then utilizing them themselves, they can affect things, either by controlling potentially somebody's emotions, or even throwing coins at high speed, or flinging themselves through the air, so on and so forth, making them so super strong, etc., etc. It is an interesting book, but I'm going to just give out my very quick overview and thought process of it. Is that it's okay.
Yeah. So Brandon Sanderson is usually less known about like just his prose, the writing and whatnot, more about the world building.
Is he?
Like, yeah, his magic systems are usually pretty great, like very interesting and whatnot. And this is part of the Cosmere series, which is like he's basically got his own little universe of stuff. There's a bunch of series in the Cosmere universe, basically.
I did not know this.
Mistborn is one of them. Yeah. So all of his books have different like magic systems. Like there's one that runs off of colors. You can drain colors to get different effects or whatnot.
Neat.
There's one that involves like writing in the runes, writing in the air, and they get a magical effect.
Huh.
Yeah, he's got a bunch. There's a ton. The dude is a writing robot also. He literally
come
just
out with like
writes
insane amounts of books a year.
Less now, I think, because he started his fantasy epic series, the Stormlight series, which are like I haven't actually, and basically I haven't read everything since Stormlight 2 has come out. I haven't read any of his stuff. But that it's like 1,600 pages maybe. Stormlight 2.
That's
and he wants to do
about 1,000 more than the
these.
first book, so of Mistborn that I read. So.
Yeah, Stormlight 1 is a little less, but Stormlight 2 was I just remember that he said because I think he's printed with Tor, and he it had the most pages that they could print in a book, like of their binding technology, like the way they bind their books. He maxed it out, and he wants to do 10 of these, so that has taken up a lot of his time.
I could see why.
Yeah, that magic system, that world has a few different magic systems, and they're pretty awesome. Like one involves some gravity control.
I think what's most interesting is just the fact that he's able to come up with all these magic systems. That in itself is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I will give him points for it. I will just list off the few things that I did like in the book that really did stand out to me. When he talked about allomancy and ferochemical, those were really cool to learn about. Those were interesting. The Inquisitors were really cool and interesting, albeit they showed up very little in the book. But they themselves are cool. Lord Ruler is obviously, he was interesting because he's part of the whole thing in the ending of the book. And Ellen. Ellen was my favorite character.
Oh, really?
Yes, absolutely my favorite character. A little bit less so as the book went on and you get closer to the end of it. But his first appearance struck a chord with me. I just enjoyed the way he acted and talked and everything.
Well, you would probably enjoy the second one more than maybe?
Possibly. I don't know.
So I guess I don't know how much you wanted, or I don't know what spoilers you had in mind.
I would say let's keep just to the first book. I don't know if I'm going to read the other ones yet or not.
Well, I just meant with the first. Well,
I finished the first book, but I guess we'll get into it right now. So, for those of you who are listening, this will be spoilers after this part. I'm sure Obs will throw in a tag or something to let you guys know when it ends. So, here we go. I gotta say, like, for the majority of the book, though, and I know certain books can start this way. It was a pretty rough droll in the first half of the book, which I'm generally not okay with. I think something kind of has to be interesting a little bit earlier on than going through 300-something pages to eventually find something that's like...
Yeah, this is a lot of setup.
Yeah, but, like, that's the problem, is, like, you can still have fun with the setup, and that was something I didn't really
I think it's a lot of planning, right? Because this one's kind of Ocean's 11.
It's a lot of planning, but they're still doing stuff in that, but it's never a lot that you see or nothing interesting happening with it. I mean, the most interesting thing I think really happens is the first time when you see Kelsier fight, that's probably one of the more interesting things about it, although...
Yeah, that's a pretty interesting scene.
Although I don't know, like, I've kind of gotten to the opinion that it's a little too detailed. I actually couldn't keep up with most of what was going on. Not for a lack of trying, but that it just ultimately it's like, oh, he pivots left, then he pushes off, then he flies through the air. And I'm like, he pivoted left to what direction, though? Which direction is pivot left? Was he facing north when he pivoted left? What was happening? Then he threw himself off to the side. Okay, which side? Well, no, he's flying through the air forward. I'm like, what did he do to do that? Which way is he going? Is he upside down? Is he going to make the 10-point landing? I need to know.
Did you see the wires?
Yes. I mean, and it's true, like, it's like, for the most part, you can follow it. It's fine. I'm exaggerating for just funny effect here, but there were parts in the combat where I would read it and then I'd have to just go back to make sure that what I read was what I thought was happening. And I'm not a big fan of that. I understand, like, sometimes getting the specifics is needed for combat, but I'm also understanding that sometimes if you get too specific, it gets too detailed and it becomes this slog of details to get through. And that can be sometimes good, and that can sometimes be bad, and that'll be a perspective that's different for everybody. But for me, there are points where it's like, you could probably have just not described this part so detailed, and I would have gotten what you were trying to say anyway.
Yeah. So I'm not, like, not to give specific spoilers, but, like, the second book, like, this series is a little weird, or at least, like, these three books, like, they're not really like, each book is kind of different. Like, the next one's kind of more political,
which is fine,
and then the third one is just different from that. Like, yeah. So, but I always loved the Mistborn magic system of, like, so you burn metals, like 10 will give you super senses, sort of, or heightened senses, I believe.
Yep. It'll give you
and
heightened senses.
Iron is super strength, or
it's pewter.
You get stronger.
Pewter.
Or no, pewter. Yeah, pewter. They're all like a base metal and then an alloy.
Yep.
Sort of, I think. Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, and then like because iron and steel. Yeah, it is steel. Okay, it is push and pull with metals, and they use that with a lot of, like, fighting scenes.
Yep, because that's one of the bigger things about it. And then you've got And then you've got, like, the secret metals, or the quote-unquote the metals that really don't matter. You've got gold, and then technically it's alloy, and then you have atium, and then it's alloy.
So, Mistborn's always interesting, because he always planned to do, like, 3 trilogies.
Uh-huh.
This one is fantasy. the second one was supposed to be like 1970s ish technology, and the last one is supposed to be sci-fi.
Oh, really?
Yep. And I don't know. For some reason, he decided to do a Western type technology level one, and it got so popular he decided to do 3 more of those. Which, yeah. And I think he finished the second one while he was like, he had writer's block on another book. Like, again, the dude's a robot when it comes to like writing.
Huh.
So
what was your most favorite character in the book, though, Mao? At least in Mistborn, the first one.
I'm not real sure. I prefer the second Mistborn series to this one. This was one of his much earlier series. I think it was, it's one of his first. I can't remember if might have been first published even, not first written. I think the one with like, there's a dying city was the first written but published later. I mean, I'm a fan of Kelsier, or however you say his name.
I mean, nobody pronounces it so, but that's how
right.
I would assume to say it too. Kelsier.
I always liked him, but he's like the mentor character and whatnot, and the charming rogue. Yep,
he's gonna die. I knew that from once I picked up the book and his character showed up and he was starting to do all this. I was like, he's gonna die.
Yeah,
his character has to. Oh shit! How very professional of me. But yeah, I mean, I kind of knew that. One character that I wasn't sure was going to die was Sazed, the Terraceman steward.
Yes, he's interesting, and they have their own type of magic where they store stuff in magic or metals.
Yep, they store it in metals, and then they can draw upon it at a later point, but it's generally a very poor trade-off because the amount that they pull off, the amount that they store is diminished for what they take away from themselves, and then when they pull it into it, the time that it's utilized is always cut in half for double the effect.
Yeah.
But it's always going to burn out quickly.
Diminishing returns.
Yeah.
And then just for the sake, do they go much into the villain, or the Inquisitor's magic type? In this one, I can't remember.
No, not this one. They don't really explain it too much. Marsh does state, since he obviously because of what he becomes, Marsh does explain though that the process for it is kind of messy. And
so because to describe an Inquisitor, they have like metal spikes driven into their skull.
Yeah.
In their eye sockets.
I'm guessing it's a very much it's a forced fusion of ferrochemical and allomancy because they can, they're super strong. They can enact on a lot of things. They can pull it in, and the like. But they give up some natural senses like actual sight. They don't actually see things with their eyes anymore because there's spikes in them now. Instead, they actually
things that just see spikes.
Yeah, right. They actually see through like chemical, not chemical based. They see through like magic vision, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah, probably something like that.
Because I mean, they, for all intents and purposes, they're still seeing things. They just see the metals in everything as well. So,
but yeah, I think I like the third one in the series the most, though, probably.
Oh, I wouldn't know. I haven't gotten there.
I'm trying to. It's hard to like remember everything about just the first book, right?
Yeah, I can understand. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time. I don't read nearly as much as I used to.
Yeah, that's the same though. Truth be told, I will state that like Vin, she didn't super interest me all that much, which is kind of depressing because she's kind of huge.
An author insert, especially in the first book.
It's kind of unfortunate.
A blank slate character.
I don't know. She wasn't all that interesting to follow. She really wasn't, which sucks because half of the book is literally following her,
right? If
if not more, for that fact.
She does more in the other books, but yeah, she's not much of anything in the first book.
It's. I will state it's also a little bit frustrating for her character because she starts her life her whole life has been one type of thing, and then she gets pulled into a crew with Kelsier and their gang, and then in 6 months' time, she's doing things against literally a lifelong time of training, of thought process, of mentality, and so she's suddenly changing herself within 6 months. I'm not saying it's impossible. I am saying it didn't make for a good read in this character, at least in my eyes. It just, I don't know. I feel like if your mentality has been born, quite literally beaten into you, for, I don't know how old she is. She's like 15, 16, whatever. For that long in your lifespan, I would say it's very hard to cut some of those habits like she did. It's not easy. But I mean, that's just a personal complaint of mine. Kelsier, again, for all that he was, the charming rogue, I didn't actually find him all that charming as rogue. Don't get me wrong. He is charming, but he wasn't charming enough, I guess, for me. Like, the effort was there. What his archetype was supposed to be was there. And he definitely had his own things about him. But it felt half alive to me. In a way. He didn't really feel like...
Reynolds.
It wasn't a Han Solo, so to speak. Which, I mean, to be fair, it's really hard to be a Han Solo.
Right.
Because, I mean, Han Solo's wonderful. So, but... in that regards to a roguish character, he just didn't really stand out to me.
Yeah. Again, this Mistborn trilogy, like, of his work, is the writing's not that great, to be honest.
I can tell. Like, there was one of the other, I mean, like, I don't mean to like bash on it, because I'm sure there's some people out there who really love this book. In fact, the person who recommended it to me loves the series a lot, so I don't want to bash it to be mean. But yeah, the writing in it isn't super great. I don't, and you, but your explanation of telling me that, like, this is one of his earliest books.
Yes.
Explains to me that immediately, because this is like me looking at my own writing when I first started and be like, wow, I can't believe I wrote like that, kind of thing.
Right. Plus, again, like, his strength has always been in, like, world building stuff, which, I mean, as this series goes on, you get a lot more of this world.
It shows. I mean, the world building in itself, that was one of the better strong standpoints. I will agree with that.
Actually,
it feels stronger.
My favorite character of the first book is probably the Lord Ruler.
Ah, yeah, he is a pretty...
Just his story. And the way the prophecy, whatnot stuff is all told.
Yeah, I did enjoy that part a lot. That's probably
so the best,
fun to read. Yeah. That was actually really good. That's actually a good point. I totally forgot about that. But yes, reading, that didn't take long to figure out, actually, for the book. At least for me, it wasn't. Because I got to, like, about maybe the 5th or 6th time I read one of his notes, and I was like, is this the Lord Ruler I'm reading about?
Yeah.
Is this his book that I'm reading? Which, I mean, you'll find out the twist at the end of it. Because there's always a twist in books. But, that was really interesting to read. So I don't know if I have any more else to say about it. I honestly think it's an okay book. I'm not sure if I'm going to read the rest of them or not. It definitely could have been worse. But I don't think I don't know if it's the kind of book that I'm going to continue on with. It was it was okay. It was solid for what it was. But not enough. I don't know if the characters were enough to interest me. I can't. And I know the second book is going to follow a lot of Vin, and as you stated, like, she gets better.
Yeah, it's a lot of Vin and Ellen, I believe.
And Ellen is enjoyable, but I think what I liked about him so much was that he was kind of sparse, and that he had this kind of wittiness, kind of going back and forth with Vin when they did meet with one another, which is what I enjoyed a lot of. But I'm fairly certain that's not really going to be there, which means that he as a character...
I honestly cannot remember
I think that means his character as Ellen is going to have to change it into something a little bit else, especially considering his new position within the world. So
right, yeah, the second one, like, builds upon that, like, because there's a lot more political stuff happening now with the fallout from the first book.
Yep. So
you could always just jump to new characters with the Wild West type Mistborn.
I don't.
Those were written years later, so I don't know.
I don't know. I
But
don't
yeah.
know.